Yo, what's up? Giancarlo Fancast Live podcast. So, New York Mets baseball is back after having, without a doubt, their best week of the season thus far, winning five in a row, taking two of three from the Tampa Bay Rays, the supposed best team in baseball right now, and then taking three from the Cleveland Guardians. And um, they've done it in stunning fashion. Probably some of the best baseball I've seen the Mets play this season. Um, Look, there was a lot of negativity surrounding the team up until the start of this five-game win streak. They had lost, I don't know, five series, splitting two, so there was seven straight series the Mets hadn't won, and it had a lot to do with bad starting pitching, obviously with all the injuries to the starting rotation, with Scherzer being out, them being suspended, Verlander being out the first month of the season, David Peterson not living up to his expectations. He's been sent down to AAA once again. Kodai Senga, uh, who we didn't know much about coming into this season, got off to a slow start, but is starting to pick it up. And now you have Scherzer back, probably still pitching somewhat injured. Verlander looked really good Sunday in one of the doubleheaders against the Cleveland Guardians, going eight strong innings, giving up just one run. So these are all good signs after all the negativity surrounding the team during that seven series span that dated back to June 19th when the Mets won their last series against the LA Dodgers out in LA. Things are starting to look up. And that's good because the team is starting to get healthy. That they're starting to put some wins together. They've won two straight series now. The pitching has been a lot better. The bullpen has been fantastic, and of course they're doing this without Edwin Diaz, who was lost in the WBC to a freak incident when he blew out his leg. He's probably going to be out the season. We still don't know for sure if he's going to come back this season. If he does, that'd be great. If he doesn't, he'll have to wait it out until 2024. Um, yeah, I mean, listen, guys like Francisco Lindor was struggling. Alonso was struggling, even though his power numbers are up. He leads the league in home runs. I think he's leading the league in RBIs. He has gotten probably some of the biggest clutch hits for the New York Mets thus far this year. Um, but this all started in the series against the Tampa Bay Rays, I believe I forget when Vientos was called up. Mark Vientos was called up either at the start of that series or he was started the second game of the series. I forget which. Either way, Mark Vientos um, brought a spark to this team. He had a home run in his first start. He started at third base. Surprisingly enough, I was shocked to see him at third base. I had no idea I know he played third base in the minors, but I don't know if he was playing third base at least while Beatty was at AAA. I think once Beatty was called up, he may have played some third base um, in the meantime, but he was mostly DHing. And obviously, the Mets continue to have their struggles with the DH position, and they were having problems with the catcher position until Francisco Alvarez was called up. And obviously, they were having problems with third base until Brett Beatty was called up. So the likes of Brett Beatty, Francisco Alvarez, and now Mark Vientos, they've really lit a spark under this team. It's incredible the response the team has had since these three guys have been called up. It took Francisco Alvarez a small amount of time to get himself going because obviously he hadn't dominated AAA pitching, but he was hitting very well at AAA. But when he came up, he looked overmatched and didn't look like he was ready to hit major league pitching. But he is starting to prove a lot of people wrong. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen when Narvaez comes off the IL because if you guys ever noticed, Gary Sanchez, who was signed by the New York Mets to a minor league contract, has been called up to the New York Mets um, major league roster. Nito is out with an injury, so they needed somebody to come up and take his place to back up Alvarez. And so far, he's made some pretty good impressions on the New York Mets organization in the 2-3 games he's been up here. So it's going to be interesting to see what is going to happen with the catcher position when Narvaez comes back, or even if when Nito comes back, whichever comes back first. Um, my biggest fear is that the Mets are going to send down Francisco Alvarez, and the reason why I think they'll do that is because he has options where Nito does not, and I don't think Narvaez does either. And if you send down Gary Sanchez, there's a good chance that he'll opt out and become a free agent once again, and he'll have the right to sign with whatever team he wants, which is the reason why the Mets called him up to begin with, because there was an opt out for Gary Sanchez on this past Friday, where the Mets had to make a decision whether to call him up to the Major League Baseball club or allow him to opt out of his contract, his minor league contract, and become a free agent once again and go ahead and sign with another team. But the Mets, with the injuries to Nito and Narvaez, they felt this was an opportunity to bring him up and see what he's got. And by doing so, they get to keep him, at least for the time being, until they decide what they'll do when Narvaez and Nito come back. If Gary Sanchez is still hitting at that point, there's a good chance that Gary Sanchez might stick here with the Major League club. He may not catch, but he can certainly DH. You know, he's got some pop in that bat still. So, again, the DH position has been a problem. It was a problem since the DH was allowed in the National League. The Mets started there with J.D. Davis and Dom Smith. That didn't work out. Those two guys are now gone. J.D. Davis is in San Francisco. Dom Smith is now starting as a first baseman with the Nationals. And then they brought in the likes of Daniel Vogelbach and Darren Ruff. Darren Ruff is no longer with the club. He supposedly was dealing with some injuries last year, with a wrist injury, some tendonitis, I don't know. He's no longer here. He went back and signed with San Francisco. Last I heard, they DFA'd him, so he's no longer on the Major League roster in San Francisco either. And Daniel Vogelbach continues to be on this Mets roster. Granted, he's making $1.5 million, so he's not making a whole lot of money, which to me would make sense to part ways with them and keep one of the younger guys or bring up a younger guy like a Ronnie Mauricio who's at AAA, who's ripping the cover off the ball. He's hitting 350 something. He's driving in runs. He's stealing bases. The Mets don't think he's ready yet because he's a free swinger, and they feel that Major League pitching will take advantage of his free swinging, and he'll end up striking out too much. And they feel that that would set him up for failure, so they want to keep him at AAA, continue to swing the bat the way he is, continue to be more disciplined at the plate before the Mets ever make a decision to bring him up. But right now, I think Ronnie Mauricio is the odd man out because of the fact that Vientos has come up and he's hitting. Francisco Alvarez is now hitting. Brett Beatty's been hitting since he's been up here. They've all been hitting with pop. So those three guys have stretched out this New York Mets lineup to the point now pitchers have to deal with both the top of the Mets order and the bottom of the Mets order because everybody is hitting. And the Mets have been waiting for that for quite some time. They needed this offense to start clicking on all cylinders, and finally they have that motor is running. And at any given time, any position player, any DH can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And it's amazing how the season has totally turned around with the call ups of Beatty, Alvarez, and now Vientos. So, yeah, I mean, with all the negativity that was going around, um, a lot of Mets fans were down, and Mets fans were starting to boo the Mets at Citi Field. That's not a good sign. You have players, um, you know, getting into it with the fans when they're out in the field. That's not a good sign. So there was a lot going on. Um, but the players just weren't giving up. They were confident that they were going to be able to turn this around, and they finally have. Now there's some big decisions to be made here. Um, Listen, Vogelback. I have respect for Vogelback. I have nothing against Vogelback, but the fact of the matter is he's a DH. He's supposed to go up there and smack the cover off the ball, hit some home runs, drive in some runs. But he's going up there and he's being selective and he's taking a lot of walks. Yeah, his on base percentage is high, but the fact of the matter is that's not his job. His job is not to take a walk. His job is to put the bat on the ball, put it in play, and hope for the best. Hit it where they ain't. And Daniel Vogelback just isn't doing that. And he has nothing else to offer but swinging the bat at the DH position. Yeah, he could play first base, but he's a big dude, doesn't have a lot of flexibility, doesn't have a lot of range, doesn't have a whole lot of speed. So I don't know if the Mets trust to play him at first base. So his only position is designated hitter. What good is that to the New York Mets? I know he's coming cheap, $1.5 million. But I think at some point the New York Mets are going to have to, decide that Daniel Vogelback just isn't the answer at DH. That's just my opinion. So the Mets now head to Chicago for a 3-game set against Chicago. Now, if you guys remember, Chicago was one of those teams towards the end of the season last year that swept the Mets. And it was during that time when the Mets were struggling to get some offense going. They were struggling with pitching. They were struggling with injuries. And that series, more so than the Atlanta Braves series, pretty much put the dagger in the New York Mets as far as winning the NL East. Had the Mets at least taken a game, even 2 out of 3 from Chicago, it probably would have been a totally different season. Maybe the Mets win first place, take the NL East, and get the first round bye and don't have to play San Diego in the first round. It would have been a totally different story. But that wasn't the case. Everything happens for a reason. Now, the Mets have a 5-game win streak. They're heading to Chicago, a team that has been up and down this year. They're a team in rebuild mode. But they're playing some competitive baseball regardless of how good or how bad their roster is. So the Mets can't take them lightly like they took them lightly last year towards the end of the season. 2 of 3 would be fine, but a sweep would be awesome. Continue this win streak, get it to 8 games with the series against Chicago, and then just take it step by step by step. Listen, last year at this time, let's go back a week. On the 17th, as of May 17th last year, the Mets were in first place by, I think, 6.5 games on the Phillies, on the Marlins and Braves, I think, or the Marlins and Phillies, and the Braves were in fourth place. And the Braves at that time were 3 games under 500. And then they eventually went on that 14-game win streak to turn their season around. and put the pressure on the Mets. Remember that? Well, in 2023, that could be the New York Mets. It could easily be the New York Mets. If they continue to play baseball like they are playing right now, they can easily go on a 14-game win streak, turn the season around, and battle it out with the Atlanta Braves for first place. You never know. So now there's a lot of good vibes. There's a lot of positivity now. The Mets have won 5 in a row. They're going into Chicago to play a not-so-good Chicago Cubs team. Maybe the winning ways will continue. Everybody's starting to get healthy. Francisco Lindor is hitting. Starling Marte is hitting. Nimmo is hitting. Pete Alonso's hitting bombs and driving in runs. The guy's incredible. Pete Alonso is an amazing, amazing player. He is going to destroy a lot of New York Mets records if he stays in a New York Mets uniform. He's going to destroy records left and right. It's not even funny how good he is. Again, the additions of Beatty, Vientos, and Alvarez. I mean, Alvarez is finally starting to get into a groove, and he's got, I think, four home runs on the season, 5 home runs on the season, and some of them were bombs. I've never seen a kid so excited when the Mets score runs or take the lead when he's on the bench, when he's in the in the dugout. It's amazing. It's such a great attitude, and I hope that spreads to the rest of the team, because they definitely needed some positive vibes. Specifically after losing the first game to Tampa Bay, when things just didn't look good, and us Mets fans were talking about a possible sweep at the hands of the Tampa Bay Rays, and then all of a sudden things just turned around. Mets take the next 2, win the series 2 of 3, and then they sweep the Guardians. Sweeping a doubleheader, playing Friday night, getting rained out Saturday. They win Friday night, get rained out Saturday. They have the doubleheader on Sunday. And what a special treat for Mets fans having Scherzer going in Game 1 and then Justin Verlander going in Game 2. Scherzer looked pretty good. He went 6 strong innings. And Verlander went 8 strong. So this is a good sign for the New York Mets. Senga is up in Game 1 against the Cubs on Tuesday. Hopefully he can continue his success from his last start, and the Mets continue to have success and continue to win. They're over 500, the 2 games over 500 after being 3 games under, starting the series with the Tampa Bay Rays. Things have changed. Things have changed. Let's go Mets. Peace.